What's going on, everybody, and welcome in Wednesday afternoon, midweek. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Thanks for checking in. Second live stream here in 2025. A very eventful start. No shortage of news breaking down this week in the cannabis space. We're going to learn a lot here as we bring in Chairman and CEO Boris Jordan in just a moment from Curaleaf. This should be a rather interesting and very educational live stream here today. And more importantly, what are some of the trends that we should be focusing on in 2025? So if there's anyone you're going to ask in this space, it's Boris Jordan. So leave your comments below. We'd love to get your feedback, knowing that we have him here today. So with that, let's welcome in AV here on a Wednesday. Good to see you. How are things?
Good. First week of the year has been eventful with
Hasn't
the
it?
MJUS news today, with the Village Farms news on Monday evening. It's been a busy week so far.
Yeah, and for all of our viewers out there, we were promoting it this morning. We were hoping to have Shane Pennington on here today. His flight was delayed, so we're going to push that probably until next Monday or next Wednesday. But at first glance, when you saw that press release Monday night, I know there's a lot we're going to learn about why, I guess, they're doing the decision that was made, knowing that they're a council of Village Farms. But one thing's for sure, whether rescheduling happens or not, Judge John Mulrooney wants to get this done. He seems to be in order real quick with what's been happening and transpiring so far.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like he wants to have a fair and balanced process. I do think that he does need to question the merit of the DEA right now and their actual the rhyme and reason as it relates to being a proponent of the rule. The facts that are coming to light, especially as it relates to stonewalling Governor Jared Polis from testifying and then allowing the governor from Nebraska, who is very anti, and Governor Polis would be able to speak to the merits of harm reduction, the general safety as it relates to the industry, and he would be able to paint a positive, objective argument as to why cannabis could be rescheduled, and they decided not to have him at the hearing. That to me is a red flag, and I mean, I'm definitely excited to dig in more with Shane as per the evidence of the ex parte communications and the just ill will that I guess the DEA is bringing towards the process.
So many moving parts right now, knowing a new administration is coming within 2 weeks. So there's just so much speculation that goes on right now. But, you know, as I keep saying, January 20th can't come fast enough, because at least we have something concrete in place, know where we stand, and then what happens moving forward from there. So I'd like to learn more on some of the people that have been speaking to the Trump administration. So let's bring up our first guest, arguably the biggest name in cannabis, Mr. Boris Jordan, CEO and Chairman of Curaleaf. Good to see you. How are you?
Good to be here.
Yes.
Good to see you guys. Happy New Year.
I know. Happy New Year as well. So lots going on in the space right now. I think, you know, many investors look at this, and we're still under this current administration. A lot of people feel like the walls are caving in. A lot of banks are actually canceling some of their cannabis coverage, which was announced earlier this week. But, you know, for a guy like you, like obviously you have a lot of contacts in the space. First thing I'd like to ask is that, have you had any conversations with any members of the Trump administration thus far? Like, what's your take on how they're going to view this space once they enter into office in less than 2 weeks?
Listen, I think that the Trump appointees, let's be very specific, people that are going to have to go through confirmation, have been told to muzzle it, and rightfully so, they should. And so they've been told to get off social media. They've been told not to give interviews to the media. They've been told not to talk to any kind of interest groups. So really, it's radio silence coming out of the people that are actually, you know, people like RFK, people like Pam Bondi, those that are relevant to us.
Okay.
But so they're not talking right now. But I would say, though, that if you take a look at the people that he's put on that are relevant to us, I think we look pretty good.
It does.
I think we look pretty good. And more importantly, if there's one thing that I could say about Donald Trump is when he says he's going to do something, he certainly tries to do it. It doesn't mean there's a 100% success ratio. No president, no politician can boast that. But Donald Trump was one, if you remember, I mean, in his last administration, he had a whiteboard in the Oval Office that was brought in, and they put every single promise that was made on the campaign trail, and they started ticking them off as they were executing them. So Trump takes this very seriously. And listen, he's very public. He went very public on the issue of cannabis. And so the only thing I can refer to is the three things that he said he was going to do. And that was he was going to support Florida, which he did. He was going to, which unfortunately didn't happen. He said that he was going to support banking, and I actually think that, given everything that's happened in banking, and more important, that the Mark Andreessen podcast with Rogan was super important for them, because it's no longer a cannabis issue. And I can tell you, as someone who has been debanked, and who banked with money center banks, I had prime brokerage accounts at numerous organizations. I've paid hundreds of millions of dollars over the last 35 years in fees to these banks. I was debanked within 60 days of cannabis, and I was recently debanked again because now I'm CEO. So now they're even taking a closer look at me. So as someone that's been a direct recipient of this, and my children, some of whom aren't even in cannabis, have been debanked because of me being in cannabis. So it's a real problem. And if you remember what Andreessen said, that the minute they had that meeting in Silicon Valley with the various ministries or departments that are in charge of national security, and they said, hey, we're going to control AI, and they called them out on it under what legal laws, all of a sudden their entrepreneurs were debanked in Silicon Valley. So, and Trump's apparently, I think this is actually factual, but it's a rumor at the moment, but his wife and Barron were also, apparently, the rumor has it, were debanked after his court problems in New York. So I think this is not only a relevant issue for the whole country, because I think it's just, frankly, unconstitutional to take American bank accounts. And especially, can you imagine you work in a grow facility, you don't make any decisions, and you can't get a mortgage? I mean, it's crazy, right? You're working in a legal state business in the United States, and you can't get a bank account. So I think this is going to get addressed. I think it's going to go and get addressed in reconciliation, which, by the way, is really good news, because you only need 51% in the Senate in reconciliation. So you don't need that 60 votes. So I think this gets done pretty soon, is my view. Again, nobody has, and if anybody tells you they have inside information, they're full of shit, because nobody can talk right now. Yeah. But I think from everything we're hearing, I think the banking will probably get done. And, on the issue of rescheduling, guys, talk to Pennington. I know him very well. Talk to any of these people. It's irrelevant. I'm just telling you now, your conversations. I don't mean to demean anybody. The only person that matters is Donald J. Trump. Yes. That's it. No ALJ judge, no head of DEA. It doesn't matter what the DEA is doing today. It doesn't matter if they're trying to get in the way of the process. It doesn't matter what anyone says. Pam Bondi is going to do what the president tells her to do.
So
only that. And that's the only thing that matters. That's the only thing that matters. And everything else is noise.
Okay. So if I were to read more into that, does that mean, like, once he's in, like, you're pretty confident, like, all this stuff goes away?
I'm not going to make that call. I didn't say that.
I do fully agree with you. I do fully agree with you, Boris. I think that while we are getting bogged down in the minutia right now, there is going to be regime change at the DEA. There is going to be regime change in the executive branch when Donald takes the office on the 20th. And really, he's the judge, jury, and executioner. What he wants, with the stroke of a pen, will get done. If he doesn't want to do it, which he's telegraphed that he does potentially want to do it, it will get done. But I don't think anyone's going to stand in his way if he does want Pam Bondi to go in there and just
the one thing I can tell you about Pam Bondi is she's a soldier, right? I lived in Florida for 15 years now, and under Scott, she did what he told her to do, and that's the way she operates. She's a very loyal person to the person that she's working for. She's very professional, and I'm not even going to get into what her view on this is. One, I don't know, but second of all, it doesn't matter. She's going to do what the president tells her to do. Yeah. She's going to bring the issue up to him. She's going to inherit an ALJ hearing, right? Yeah. And it's going to be, she's going to inherit that. She's going to go right to the White House and say, what do you want me to do? Right. And they're going to tell her what to do. She's going to have a conversation, and that's what's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. I tend to agree with you. And I mean, kind of going on more of the federal theme, one thing that you guys have made a splash in 2024 was bringing the Select brand into the hemp category. Were you surprised to see the Farm Bill extended a year and nothing done as it relates to hemp? And I mean, how are you looking at that category in 2025?
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not surprised with anything with the previous administration. I mean, let's be honest. We all heard the rumors, but we as U.S. citizens, we all saw what was going on, right? We saw what was going on with Biden. and it wasn't a secret. I mean, he basically wasn't running the government for 2 years. So, I'm not surprised. I'd be surprised actually that anything got done. Certain things did get done. So that's the surprise to me. So my view is that I'm not surprised by anything. Usually the Farm Bill, that's a very powerful lobby. Usually they get what they want and they get it on time. I think that given all the shenanigans and the election year and everything, it just so happened that the Farm Bill fell on an election year. It's a shortened year because people basically stop working in July and they get on the campaign trails. And so I'm not surprised actually that we got pushed out. But listen, it's going to be debated this summer and it will be addressed. And the good news is what I'm hearing across the board, not only at the federal level, but I'm also hearing this at the big state levels. Okay. So, the big states like Texas, Florida, the ones that are big in this, is that there will be rollback on flour, but there isn't going to be rollback on beverages.
Interesting.
And one of the reasons is, especially after the Surgeon General report that came out this week, all the big Anheuser-Busch, they're all getting into hemp-based drinks. Everybody.
Okay.
So I'm telling you right now, beverages will be allowed to stay in the Farm Bill. I'm sure of that. Now, whether anything else happens, I don't know. I personally think they should shut it down for flour and everything, and they should go with the regulated market. But on beverages, I think they're going to keep it. And frankly, that plays into our hand because you can't remember. I did launch Beverage in Massachusetts. It just doesn't make sense on a one-state basis. So once we found the loophole and we could get the supply chain right, we obviously went with the national business, and we are now up to 8 SKUs, 8 different flavors. We're about to launch a very interesting product on the drink side of it. I can't talk about it, but it's going to be a big splash. It's really good. I tasted it. It's going to be really fun. And then we got some other stuff coming down the line. So we're going to be, we're going to probably have, besides seltzer, we're going to have a bunch of other drinks that are coming to the market over the next, call it 3 months. And so we want to be a big player beverage.
So is that a calculated decision to add the 2.5 milligram form factor to the line to, let's say, maybe stay under that bar with more SKUs pending? It
was not about that bar. It was really about a consumer. So when I launched in the summer, that was really a test launch, Anthony. So I made a lot of changes to that drink, right? First of all, we wanted to see what people thought about the flavors. We've changed out some flavors based on that. We've made some that are a little sweeter, some that are less. So we have changed the formats, the SKUs, the flavoring, because of what the consumer came back with. Plus, then we asked the consumer, do you want these other things? And they said yes. So the consumer also came back and said, hey, some of us don't want a 5%. Some of us don't want a 5 milligram or a 10 milligram. Some of us want a 2.5 milligram. And that's why we brought the 2.5 milligram. Plus, states like Connecticut aren't allowing more than 2.5 milligrams of THC. So that's the other reason we did it. But a lot of people, and some of our big brick and mortars, which you're going to hear about here shortly that we're doing, came to us and said, hey, we want the 2.5 mig drink because our consumer is new to the sector and they don't want to have a 5 milligram. So that's why we did it.
How much do you think this is going to develop, this whole beverage landscape? You just mentioned Anheuser's getting involved. If you and I are having this conversation 12 months from now, how much does this develop over the next 12 months?
So, Chad, I don't remember if you remember this, but it was about 3 years ago. I was at some conference. I think it might have been Benzinga in Chicago when I was speaking on stage, and I said that beverages were going to be the biggest form factor in the sector, representing 50%. Everybody laughed me out of the room. Well, I'm telling you, it's going to be 50% of the sector. Because Americans in particular, we love beverages.
Yes.
And that is a form factor that Americans just really, really like. And I believe that cannabis is going to be at least 50% of our products are going to be beverage-based products. So I do think, and I think Gen Z is really walking away from alcohol. We're seeing that. We're
100%.
seeing alcohol sales falling. And they want an alternative. They want to go out and still have a good feeling, not wake up with a hangover. So I think, and it's not only going to be seltzers, by the way. There's going to be a lot of other things, right? We are going to go full bore, like with the whole suite of offerings to make sure that we're in every segment that's relevant, but we're going to test it first. Like what we did this summer, we went out with one run. We tested it on DoorDash. We tested it through some brick and mortar. We had people come back to us, tell us what they wanted. We wanted multiple state testing. They came back, they gave us their feedback, and now we've come out with a much larger and more interesting offering than we had this summer. And we'll continue to do that as we evolve and as we develop.
That was a Benzinga event too, because I remember that speech.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I started saying that in the early days of the podcast, and everybody was like, "You're crazy. That's not going to happen." I was like, just watch. Like, you want to have the form factors at sporting events, music festivals, movie theaters. It's going to be beverage. It's not going to be combustible flower or anything for a vape. But I mean, Boris, getting into the core business, I know Q3 you announced the initiative of getting back to our roots as it relates to Curaleaf. How do you see that materializing, or what are some of the focuses, let's say, for 2025 as it relates to getting back to those roots?
So listen, I'm a very different, and this is not a criticism, I'm a very different CEO. I was hoping never to have to be a CEO again, I'll be honest with you. So that's but I'm a very different CEO than a lot of the previous CEOs. I'm very results oriented. I hold people accountable. I build a culture. I like to pay people, but you got to make money for your shareholders. Yeah. So I've had to I am rebuilding Curaleaf in my vision now, rather than the vision of the previous 3 CEOs that Curaleaf has had. And so that's work in progress, right? You can't do that in 1 quarter. I'm at this now for, call it 5.5 months. I think it's going to take me a full 12 months to get the company to where I want it to be, and how I want it to be. But I can tell you we are making very, very good progress. But it's not going to be this, 1 quarter or everything changes. You're going to see quarter after quarter after quarter improvements in all of our metrics. I'm very metrics oriented. I believe in meritocracy. I don't believe in entitlement. So I'm basically creating KPIs for every aspect of my business, holding people accountable to meet those. I'm changing the bulk of the management at Curaleaf is new now, and it's going to continue to be upgraded, because I really believe you got to have people that are stronger than yourself, and you got to have people that are A-level people running your business. And so I'm really trying to, and this has happened in many businesses that I've built over the years. This is my 6th company. You start out with a certain group of managers, you end up with a very different group as the business matures, as it grows, as it becomes bigger. Yeah. And that's what we're doing now. I feel very good. The U.S. we've stabilized the U.S. business. I think you're going to see every quarter, you're going to see an improvement in all of our key metrics, whether it's gross margin, whether it's EBITDA margin, whether it's cash flow. Every single quarter, I'm really cleaning up the balance sheet as well. You'll see that in our announcement at the end of the year. So I'm really cleaning up the balance sheet, really stabilizing that aspect of it. And then I'm focusing on growth where growth is organic. I'm not going out right now and buying anything. So I'm focused, for instance, New York, big growth market for Curaleaf. We are back to being #1 because we fell out of that position because the state wouldn't allow us into the adult use program. So we came in much later. Now that we're in the program that we're in, it took us 12 months to get there. We're back to being #1 in terms of our brand and in terms of our sales and wholesale and retail. Likewise, Ohio, obviously focusing on organic growth, that adult use launch in the U.S. And then, of course, for Curaleaf, it's also Europe, right? We're having a great run. That run is really accelerating. We're really looking forward to 2025. As I said, we finished the year over 100 million in sales. Last year, we're looking to do a lot more, and I can't give the numbers yet because I got to wait till
all good
our quarters. But we're looking for substantial growth in Europe next year. We also have some announcements. Some new countries have come into the fold, and Curaleaf's won licenses in those. We'll be announcing that shortly as well. So, and those are big, like 80 million type, citizen market. So we're really seeing some acceleration in Europe right now, and you're going to see that from us. So I feel good about where our business is. So Europe is very much growth. New York is very much growth, and in the other parts of our business, because let's be honest, I think you said that, or it was maybe another podcast I was listening to. Every state in this country has contracted this year, except New York and Ohio. Yeah, every state is contracted. Price compression is a real issue. I mean, in New Jersey, you wouldn't believe. I think we've announced this, but our revenue from the first year of adult use to what will be 25 will almost be down 50% from the high because of what's happening
New Jersey.
In New Jersey. I mean, the price compression has been so extreme, and the amount of stores that have opened up. So we're only allowed 3 retail stores, right? So our wholesale growth, which is dramatic in New Jersey, can't keep up with the decline in retail because there were so few stores in New Jersey, and we captured so much share in that market while it was medical, that obviously in the first year of adult use, before stores opened up, Curaleaf just cleaned up on that number, and that is now contracting. So when you have such, and by the way, all my competitors, I talk to them all the time now, are contracting as well. So when you see that kind of thing, it's hard to make up that kind of contraction. So 24 was very much a try to stabilize. I think 25 is going to be very similar in the US, and Europe is going to be about growth. Europe's going to be, so our growth is New York, Ohio, Europe, and the rest, what we're trying to do is stabilize it, get it into a good position, be as efficient as we can, improve our cost structures and balance sheet, and then as the market recovers. And obviously hemp. But the reason I'm not talking about hemp yet is it's too small at the moment, right? It's just not. I always say once our businesses get over 100 million in sales, we start to talk about the numbers. But at the moment, hemp is where Europe was, a couple of years back. It's early stage.
Okay.
Do we see a lot of
talking about? Or go ahead, Shad.
I was going to say, do we see a lot of consolidation this year in 2025? Like, you've talked a lot about the company and what you guys plan to do, but what are some notable trends that you think are going to happen this year in 2025? Because right now, a lot of investors, they're concerned with where the space is, but there's a lot of moving parts. We have a new administration coming in. Some feel confident that there's going to be changes, but what are some notable trends that people need to pay attention to concerning this space heading into this year?
Listen, the biggest problem in consolidation is balance sheets.
Yep.
That's your biggest problem. And by the way, not only in the publics, but also in the privates. Because you start looking at these privates and you see none of them are paying 280. So, and some of them aren't even accruing 280 on their balance sheet, right? So at least the publics are accruing it. The other guys aren't even accruing it. So that's the real problem is a lot of these things are zombie companies. Some of these companies are zombie companies, and you just don't know where you stand on the 280E issue. And so you are potentially taking on an enormous liability. And for companies like Curaleaf, I just can't afford to do that. I can't take on that liability. So lucky for us, we invested heavily into infrastructure in the early years. And so we have a very good footprint. And all I need to do now is make that footprint perform to A+. And I'll get there. It's, as I said, it was going to take me 12 months from when I started, which was August of last year. By the third quarter, I think we'll be humming on all cylinders at Curaleaf. But, so I'll take in a store here, a store there, in those places. Like I did a deal in Ohio. I'll do small things, but I can't do anything large because I just can't put that stuff on my balance sheet, and I don't want to ruin it. And I'm not sure we need to right now. Like I'd rather miss 10% or 20% run, but be conservative. And once I have clarity on 280E, then I can move. And if I miss a 20% valuation run, that's okay. We're in this game for the long term, so I'm okay with that.
Do we see the field of companies shrink in the overall space?
I think you're going to see that I think Curaleaf is going to be an outlier a little bit because I think we will grow next year. It's not going to be by a huge amount, but I think we will grow because of our European presence. But if the trend continues, and I do think it will continue in the U.S., I think there's going to be more price compression. I think Florida's up next for price compression on the back of this AU thing. So I think with price compression coming, I think that you're going to see continued, flat to down 5% type thing amongst the better operators. Some of the other operators, it could be worse. But the better operators, I think you're going to see flat to slightly down. And in Curaleaf, we'll talk about that in our earnings report.
Gotcha.
So how are you thinking strategically about Florida now that Amendment 3, is foregone? And this is one of the biggest markets for yourself, for some of your tier one competitors. Like, how are you looking at this market for 2025? Is it that we're going to experience, let's say, price compression, and you're going to see pricing wars amongst the tier ones and some of the larger companies that did build out incremental grow and bring incremental doors online with the preconceived notion that A3 was going to pass?
So listen, I think there's two things that we have to discuss in Florida. The first is Florida's kind of like the Trump issue, right? It's all about Trump. I was going to say in Florida, it's all about Kim. Kim's got such a large presence and such a large share. There's a lot's going to depend on where she stands in inventory, what her strategy is going to be. So far, I have to say she's been very measured, right? She didn't do what many people thought, and that is, go and discount, massively in order to knock everybody out because her margins are very good because of her scale. She hasn't done that yet. She's sort of kept it. I would say that even though we're expecting price compression, I wouldn't say the fourth quarter was any different than any other fourth quarter in Florida. It was largely, you had some promotion around, Green Wednesday and all that kind of stuff around Christmas and New Year's, but it wasn't anything that was particularly big. I can tell you our margins are very healthy and very nice in Florida. We didn't have to go and do anything out of the ordinary to sell our product. We had a very good fourth quarter there. So I at the moment, as long as the 3 or 4 top players behave themselves, I think we're okay.
Yeah.
The question's going to be, what are the small players going to do? If they start to discount heavily, that could force us to have to discount heavily, and then you're going to have a price war, right? And they're going to lose that price war. They will. So I'm hoping that they don't do that, and we continue. The big problem is how much inventory these people carrying on their balance sheets because they were preparing for adult use. So if they didn't build inventory, then we're okay. If they built too much inventory, then we may have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. And I think I don't know if it's a lucky dynamic of the market, but a lot of the smaller guys tend to be the more premium guys that can command that pricing, which, I mean, there's a lot of $55, $60 eighths amongst those smaller guys in the market, like Flowery Sunburn, Jungle Boys. That's their core business. I'm really curious to see how it transpires down here in terms of pricing dynamics for 2025 moving forward.
Well, I can tell you, we are Curaleaf. My arrival at Curaleaf is all about product quality and focus. I won't allow a product to leave rows unless it's absolutely perfect. And you can see our THC levels are going. I'm going to go up against any craft guy. We're about to announce a couple of big new brands and new drops, and they're all focused on very, very high quality, both on the terp side, on the THC side. So we've got a few tricks up our sleeves that are coming down the line. Also, you guys remember I used to talk about this technology that Curaleaf was working on. It was called ACE. It is now in full swing. You're going to see an incredible launch of a revolutionary vape product, which is cleaner than any vape product that exists in the market. We're launching in New York, we're launching in Mass, and we're launching in Florida. We have 3 locations.
Is that an extension? Is that an extension of the brick line, or is it an extension of the brick line, or it's a new line on its own?
We eventually want to put it in brick, but our 2.0 brick is going to come out mid-year. So the viscosity in this product is high. So the current brick can't handle the viscosity. So we're doing it through the 510. That's how it's going to get launched. However, in June, when brick 2.0 comes out, we will be able to inject this new product, which I'm not going to name yet, into it. But very similarly to what distillate did. Now, I may be talking about stuff, I don't know if you guys were in the market 10, 15 years ago, but if you remember Open, when it came out with the first vapes, it was a very thick brown color, right? Yeah. And then in California, Select was part of that, by the way. In Oregon, there was a couple of guys that came out with the CO2 distillate product, right? And it was yellow, it was clear, and that just took over the market. It was cleaner, and that took over the market. And today, that's the benchmark. So what we've done now is the next level of product, which is going to be an absolutely clear product. It's a white-based oil, but more importantly, it has no solvents in it. It's clean. And you can take, I've tried it many times, you can take as big of a hit, you will never cough. It's got no negative effect on your lungs. It's truly an unbelievable product.
Huh. Last week I was in Fort Lauderdale to see Anthony and head over to Hard Rock for the college football games. And then I was actually at the Panthers game. I must have talked, I'm not kidding you, 50 people. And I would say 90% of people voted in favor for Amendment 3 in Florida. And, it is what it is. Obviously,
you were at the Hard Rock shed.
Yeah, true.
And also,
you weren't in Tallahassee in your cowboy boots and your cowboy hat.
Yeah. Also, Broward County was one of the only counties that carried the 60% over the 60% threshold for the vote on election night.
Yeah. Listen, I think there was 2 things that happened in Florida. One is a lot of Democrats didn't come out to vote because we're now such a red state.
Very well said.
Nobody thought the Democrats had any chance on anything.
Yeah.
And that hurt us. So the turnout was much lower amongst Democrats. And the second issue is, DeSantis ran a very effective, albeit he lied through the whole thing, but a very effective anti-cannabis campaign, and used taxpayer funds, and he used a lot of them, and he got it. I can tell you right now, I think if you reran it, like the same thing that happened in Arizona. Remember, we lost the first time in Arizona, and we got it the second time around because we were able to breach the 60% in Arizona. It's the only other state that had the same issue as Florida. I think if you ran Florida today, I think we've breached the 60%.
Yeah, I think you have a point. Saying that, when you look at, and you brought up the federal level and the states level, and there's broken telephone going on within government, on what's going on with this overall space right now. And what we heard actually a month ago at MJ Biz is a lot of the bigger MSO companies are really getting aggressive with the right messaging and the right lobbying that's going to take place on behalf of the industry. Is that something that you're approaching and preparing for here in 2025, knowing, given what's happened in Florida? And look, it's moment of truth time for this industry when you think of 2025.
So listen, I can't announce certain things, but I can tell you this. This industry, at least the top five, have never been closer. We talk on a regular basis. We've put our differences aside. We've put our egos aside. We are in full coordination mode. And we are putting up, I can tell you, there's going to be some big money put up to get both safe and this. We all realize it's make or break in the next 2 years for this industry. And we have to get this to happen. And so I can tell you, everyone, including the ones that never cooperated with us, are in. Everyone's in, and it's and the real dollars, right? If you don't have a $50 million pack, you can't do anything in DC.
Yeah.
So I can tell you that we're gonna be in good shape from that. No guarantees, by the way, but at least we're now coordinated. We're now talking to each other on a regular basis. And as I said, we've put our differences aside, and we all know we need to do this to save the industry, and so we're coordinated.
Well, we've been talking for 33 minutes now, and outside of what you've outlined for the company, I think that's the big takeaway that I think everybody should have here in today's interview, because that's very promising. I think that a lot of people want to hear moving forward, but it's great to know that a lot of the top companies are never been closer to working with each other. So anyway, listen, Happy New Year. Sorry about, are you Jets or Giants fan?
Unfortunately, Jets.
Oof. See you later,
Mr. Giants aren't doing much better, but
yeah, they killed their number one pick. But anyways,
but I think I might have to retire as a Jets fan because it's been way too goddamn long. It really has been. It's like cannabis, but even worse.
Yeah, I hear you. Somebody just wrote, I'm 35 years old. I feel like I've been investing in this space for over 100. And I think there's a lot of people that can relate to that. But listen, tell Camilo we say
nobody's got more money as an individual than me in this market. So trust me, I'm with everyone else. I'm with everyone else.
Boris, listen, honestly, best of luck. There's a lot of people rooting for you in the top MSOs, really hoping that you guys can do whatever you can do. But it's great to know that, a lot of work's got to be done, but you know what? You guys are prepared to do that. And it's great to hear that you're all working with each other. So best of luck. Keep in touch. Okay.
Thank you guys for everything you guys do. It's great.
All right. Thanks, Boris. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Boris.
Well, that to me was the big takeaway. Good for him, man. CEO getting his fingerprints on everything. He was saying before we went live that he's getting everybody back to the office right now. Let's face it, remote work, sometimes you can pick up some bad habits, but if there's anyone determined to be number one, he's a guy to obviously be reckoned with because his track record speaks for itself. But
yeah,
isn't that great to know?
Curious to see what happens in Florida. I'm going to see it in real time. So we shall see.
Yeah, I'm, I don't know, man. Like I was very happy to hear that, kind of like what we were hearing some things in Vegas last month about these top MSOs working very closely with each other. But I think that's all you could hope for right now.
I don't want to be casting dispersions on anybody, but yes, when there's an existential threat to the industry, which is if reform doesn't happen in the next 2 years, I would consider that an existential threat. They damn well better come together. I mean, they're a bunch of smart individuals. They finally realized that they need to get into unison. They need to unify the messaging. They need to put their money where their mouth is and get this industry on track because they're all influential individuals. And it is existential if we don't get something done.
Yep. Well, from one big story to another big story as we segue into ETF news. And with that, let's welcome in a good friend of the podcast, Mr. Dan Aarons. Good to see you. How are things?
Hey, guys. How are things? That's kind of a tough question, Chad.
I know,
After the
I know,
day we
I
saw
know.
today and everything else, but nah, we're hanging in there. And hey, happy to be on with you guys to educate a little bit about inner workings of ETFs again, because there's news.
Yeah. Well, based off of that news this morning, I don't want to ask like, were you surprised or anything like that, but does this have any kind of impact on the broader landscape of ETFs in the space? Like, how are you handling this?
Well, it has impact on the broader space because I think there's a huge misunderstanding about the news. And I think for today's read anyway, I think it was caused by that news.
Yeah.
So let's
yeah,
back up a step. What was the news, Dan? Just so we can
Okay.
set the record straight.
Exactly. for the people that don't know. So, press release this morning out of Amplify ETFs.
Yeah.
And everybody needs to know that in about a year ago, Amplify acquired the fund MJ and MJUS and a handful of other funds from a company called ETF Managers Group that no longer exists. Now, another interesting thing at Amplify is they also have the small competitor fund, ticker symbol CNBS. That's run by Tim Seymour, who's a good guy. I like Tim. It's a small fund. So yeah, under the Amplify umbrella, they have MJ, MJUS, and CNBS. But hey, Tim's fund, CNBS, it had been always a little bit arm's length from the other ones. So yeah, They announced this morning that they at approximately January 20th are going to close and liquidate the fund. Now, before I go fully in depth on that, it's standard practice. I mean, you have to give the exchange a certain number of days. You have to make a public announcement of it. And the very standard wording is that they're going to close and liquidate. And leading up to that date, the fund may stray from its investment objective as it moves to cash.
Okay.
And when you just spit out a document like that, and hey, Advisor Shares has 17 funds currently over the history of the firm. We've opened and closed plenty of funds, and it's very standard wording: closing to liquidate. Then I'll go on to explain how it's no big deal, and a lot of people are misunderstanding it. But what do you got so far on that?
So with the liquidation, is that about as black and white as it sounds? Like they're going to be forced to liquidate those assets, let's say, into the open market? Are they allowed to, let's say, do off-market deals like block trades? Company has a buyback program, not saying any specific names, but can they massage the way that they liquidate the fund?
Sure.
Or are they basically forced to go open market sell and just get rid of everything that they're currently holding?
Yeah, all they have to do is they need to have that thing down to cash for investors that hold till the end. Now, but I'm going to explain this because in this case, it actually makes perfect sense, and I can't blame them a bit for closing down the fund. So everybody needs to listen up.
Okay.
So some people can sell right now. If they're a shareholder and they want to get out while the getting's good, just do a trade. But then you're subject to getting whatever the bid ask is, put a limit order, do whatever the heck you want. If you stay all the way till the end, you got no transaction costs, you got no bid ask, you're going to get what the NAV is, net asset value on that closing day. But here in black and white is why we are of the opinion, this is just opinions, that this is no big deal. If you look at the assets, and people might want to write down with a pen and paper to keep the fund name straight here. MJUS has about 69 million in assets.
Okay.
We've tried to be very public when people are comparing funds and saying, "Oh, this fund sucks. This one's better. I don't know what's going on." It has 69 million in assets. When you look at the affiliated fund, MJ's been around a real long time. I think it has around 150 million in assets or so. Its top holding is MJUS, the affiliated fund. MJ
Can you repeat that? Can you repeat that again?
The top holding of MJ.
Yes,
is the
which is
affiliated
global,
fund
correct?
MJ.
It's like the same strategy as YOLO.
Yeah, it's like a competitor to our fund YOLO. And they actually kind of copied a strategy that we use. YOLO existed before MSOs did.
Okay.
And YOLO was the very first fund to go out and get the legal opinions and the New York Stock Exchange exemptions and everything else we needed to invest in total return swaps in U.S. companies.
Okay.
And for the, I think everybody knows this listening, but custody banks, New York Stock Exchange listings, we can't invest directly in a company like Trulieve or Cresco or the others. We use a total return swap that mimics owning the stock.
Okay.
So YOLO used to do that. After we invented the fund MSOS, we thought, hey, that's a pain in the neck to use all these total return swaps in YOLO and in MSOS. Let's just have our fund YOLO hold shares of MSOS. Let's waive the fees so we're not double dipping any funds or anything like that. Okay. So YOLO, global strategy, as you said, Anthony, gets its US exposure, US MSO exposure by holding the fund MSOs. Got it. The MJ folks came out and went ahead and copied kind of that strategy.
Okay.
So MJ, its top holding is MJ US. And if you look at the holdings, it's on their website every day. It holds about $65 million worth.
Okay.
So what that means, the entire fund MJ US is 69 million. 65 of it is held by an MJ. There's hardly any investors in this thing. It's about $4 million. So MJ
how does MJ liquidate its holdings in MJ US without crashing the vehicle? Doesn't MJ have to come off the MJ US paper?
Yeah. So there's one of two things that are going to happen here. And people might want to go back and look at the Twitter sphere. For those that if somebody's not on X, I compliment them. It's probably easier on your psyche. But Noah Hammond was sent out a couple tweets this morning. I sent out a couple. We're trying to explain this a little bit. So let's back up a little bit. Tim Seymour is involved in the fund CNBS, also at Amplify. They did a filing in November to say that they were going to add a sub-advisor. They're keeping Tim on as some kind of advisor or as portfolio manager, but they added a layer to it. I'm not sure of all the details. They also said that they're changing the investment strategy to be 100% US.
Got it.
So one of two things is going to happen in our opinion. Again, opinions here. MJ, it's not just going to get rid of its US exposure.
No.
It has about 65 million of US companies. It also holds Tilray and Aurora and Canopy and all that other stuff. Yeah. But I think they're going to do one of two things. They're going to close and liquidate MJ US and give those assets to CNBS.
Okay.
Or they're going to close and liquidate MJ US, and MJ is just going to hold the swaps itself.
Got it.
Now, you can go a little deeper under the hood here. So, again, I don't know what the relationship is with Tim, how they pay him, any of that kind of stuff. Tim's a good guy. But a couple of people have reached out to Tim. So there's no reason that MJ just can't hold the swaps themselves. I mean, we could do the same thing with our fund YOLO. We just thought we want to have a US strategy. We want to have a global strategy. It's for the global strategy. It's easier to get its US exposure through it. But hey, these guys at Amplify, it's expensive to have a fund open. And MJ US only has about $4 million of what I would call organic assets. Almost all of its assets are because MJ invests in it, because MJ holds it. Okay. So if you look at the holdings again of MJ US, it has Curaleaf and Trulieve and Cresco and all the others, but it also has MAPS, IIPR, some other stocks.
Saw a bunch of T-bills
Yeah.
in it as well. Yeah.
Oh, no, those T-bills, Anthony, are just collateral for the swaps.
Okay.
They do it in T-bills. We do it in interest-bearing accounts with Bank of New York and with money market sweep vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, I think what was the most jarring thing was to wake up this morning and see the press release, and everyone has PTSD from when MJUS does the rebalancing and just wreaks havoc all over the sector. That's what everybody saw, and everyone was like, "Oh fuck." Like, let's hope that this isn't going to just be a cascading effect.
But all you gotta do is look under the hood, get out MJ and MJUS side by side, look at the assets. Yeah. But hey, for everybody listening, and again, opinions here, because I don't know what they're going to do with their trading. I already wouldn't trade that fund the way they do. I like to think I'm good at trading and gentle with a bunch of less liquid swaps. But if they have only 4 million of real assets that aren't held by the affiliated fund, they got more than 4 million in IIPR and MAPS and stuff like that. And that's duplicative. They don't need to own that. They already hold it in the fund MJ. So I think with a blink of an eye, because, I know I've transferred swaps from fund to fund before. YOLO used to hold swaps itself. And when we wanted to, thought, hey, it'll save money and be easier to manage everything else. Let's just invest in the fund MSOS and not have duplicate. I transferred swaps from fund to fund at zero cost into the penny of at the closing price of the day. So those swaps don't have to be sold. They can just transfer the swaps into CNBS. They can make the swaps held by MJ itself. It's all under the umbrella of Amplify funds. And if they actually have 4 million of outside investor money, they got more than $4 million in MAPS and IIPR and the other listed stocks.
Yeah.
So I think we may see zero swap selling.
Okay.
Wow.
Because I mean, it was relatively red today.
Yeah.
It was red as hell, and it wasn't.
I mean, you had names like
Terracent. It was because of panic and misunderstanding.
Yeah, I mean, you had names like Terracent that were down 13%. Air was down 11%. Cannabis was down 8%, and then there was a ton of other things that were just down like sub 5%. But yeah,
I know because I saw it all. But here's the thing: is I wish the folks at Amplify, I already had wished they wouldn't do their quarterly rebalances the way they do. Yeah. Now I wish they would communicate about this closing a little bit better, because
that's a pretty brief press release, that's for sure. But I can understand the panic. But yeah, to what you're
my phone was ringing this morning. I've been explaining this all day to people because
so in theory, none of the paper needs to really leave Amplify. They can shuffle the deck around into other vehicles that they have and just absorb the assets that are in MJUS, which then lower their expenses internally, if that's the reason why they're doing this. And then we're not talking about this again, let's say next week.
Well, as a firm, if you look under the hood, I can't blame them a bit for closing this fund. Hey, if we had, if Chuck Schumer hadn't lied to us for the last 4 years, or if 3 on Florida would have passed everything else, maybe they'd be celebrating and would keep both funds open. But no, they're looking at business and thinking, we haven't raised any assets in this fund except our own assets.
Right.
And we're paying duplicative fees to our fund administrator, fund accountants, all that kind of stuff. It's expensive to have a fund open. And that fund is not profitable. So no, MJUS doesn't have more than $4 million of real outside assets in it. So I can't blame them a bit for the business decision to close it. I wish they would communicate about what the hell they're doing a little bit better. But also, if they just close and liquidate MJUS, the affiliated fund MJ is going to have a $65 million hole in it. Now, That'd be dumb.
Which they, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
They'd have $65 million in cash. So
Yeah.
no, of course they're just going to transfer the swaps from either directly held by MJ, or they might be using. Hell, Noah's even of the opinion on the Nooner today. He goes, I wouldn't be surprised if a few months down the line, CNBS changes to the ticker MJUS.
Oh, that wouldn't surprise me. That's actually a good point.
Plot thickens.
Today it was lousy timing for it.
Well, I hope a lot of people in the industry get a chance to see this interview because, yes, panic was set in for the most of the day, if not all the day. But this is telling 95% of the holdings is under MJ for MJUS. And you got to look a little bit under the hood. We live in times where people just want to see the headlines, but not do the research. And that is very compelling to explain, Dan. But hopefully people have a little bit better understanding that, as they say, this too shall pass.
Yeah. Again, hey, just theorizing, but I think the evidence points to the fact that they're just going to shuffle things around there.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see on the tape on Friday. If because reminder, the markets are actually closed tomorrow, which I didn't know until just before we got on the podcast. We'll find out on Friday.
Well, listen, is it if the market's closed, is it a holiday in the U.S. tomorrow too, or just markets
Jimmy
closed?
Carter's funeral.
I do know that, but is it a holiday as well or no?
No.
What do you consider a holiday? The markets are closed.
Nobody's working.
Yeah, everything else is open besides stock markets, and most private businesses are open. Yeah.
What did you think of the conversation we had with Boris? How are you feeling about 2025?
I haven't talked to that guy in hours, but I love Boris. Always fascinating to listen to Boris. And I think it's great right off the top. He says, hey, all these appointees of Trump have been told to keep quiet, waiting on the confirmations. That is something everybody needs to remember. Pam Bondi is, again, I had somebody this morning asking me, that was on Yahoo Finance. I was on Yahoo Finance a couple hours ago. But Pam Bondi might be anti-cannabis. No, she's not anti-cannabis.
She's a foot soldier.
I think he explained it.
She does her job.
Everybody's kind of like perception of her was well explained by Boris, that she's definitely very supportive, has whoever she is working with their backs, very trusted individual. So obviously there's one person that Boris said in this equation that is the most important person, and that's obviously the president, Donald J. Trump. So
100%. No,
but it's great to hear that the top MSOs have never been closer, which to your point, Anthony, is Captain Obvious, but to hear it
most of them, not all of them, most of them.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a couple outliers.
Yeah, I'm sure
they're 100% are.
Yeah.
No, we're seeing with what's happening with a lot of people, working through Mission Green and Weldon Angelos and people that get in the Trump team's ear. There's a lot of communication going on there. There's a lot of people like Charlie spends a lot of time down in Washington working with people. Then, separate than that, a number of the companies are involved in the Boys lawsuit. A lot of the same people. A lot of cooperation is happening.
Yeah,
not everybody, but a lot of cooperation's happening, and everybody needs to chill out and sit back and wait because things are in motion.
A lot of moving pieces right now, but it's a new year, but I don't feel like it's an official new year until post January 20th. So onwards and upwards. Let's go. Definitely. Listen, tell Noah, tell Mackenzie we say hi. Happy holidays, or I should say happy new year. And we'll be in touch soon. Okay.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Oh, before you go, what's better, Trade to Black or Yahoo Finance? I know you're on Yahoo before you came on, but if you had to make a choice.
Do I get to judge on audience size or knowledge of the space? Love you guys.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. You got me there, buddy. Appreciate it, my friend. All right. Two good interviews.
By the way, most importantly, today is Jungle and Java's birthday.
Awesome.
So happy birthday, Jane. Thank you for everything that you do, especially posting the news and running that Twitter account. It's like to just wish you a happy birthday.
She is without a doubt probably the nicest giving person, I would say, in this space. She keeps us, if you ever want to know news, probably somebody that we should hire, because she's incredible at what she does. But David Benz, appreciate your feedback. TDR all the way. There was some great feedback as well. I know some comments when we had Boris on. Sorry we couldn't get to all of your comments, but really appreciate everybody for spreading the word here today. We've gotten a lot of great stuff here. But Friday, we got coming up, 11 a.m. An old but name that people remember a lot here in the cannabis space, Joe Caltabiano, founder, right, at Cresco, Anthony?
Yeah, founder Cresco, yeah.
So some might ask, why are we bringing him on Friday's live stream? Well, here's the reason why. Mr. Caltabiano was at Mar-a-Lago yesterday and had lunch with Donald J. Trump. So we want to know what that conversation was all about. And yes, the topic of cannabis was brought up. So make sure you log on Friday at 11 a.m. to find out what that conversation was all about. But again, we will continue to remind people that our job is to make sure that we give you access to our network. And our network right now, I'm happy to share, is in touch with not only the administration, but Donald J. Trump himself. So that will be a very, very good and interesting show, right?
Yeah, it'll be good. You might have just blown up Joe's inbox. But yeah, it'll be it's going to be a good show.
I asked him flat out if it's okay that we could bring him on and ask him about it. And he said, hey, okay. So hopefully he's still good with that. But really, really good guy. That's for sure. But listen, everybody, we always say, make sure to smash that like button. Again, share this video with your network if you can. We want to continue to spread the word, get this message out there. It's a moment of truth time for this industry. So we really need your help and support of getting the messaging out there with this video. As usual, stay up to date with all the information. If there's anything you guys missed here on today's live stream, you can check out, obviously, our YouTube channel afterwards, or even better, check out our takeaways and analysis from these interviews tomorrow morning by subscribing to our Baked In newsletter. Scan that QR code now if you haven't done so already to get the latest insight and some of our takeaways from today's podcast. But listen, appreciate the time, Anthony. We'll check back in with you on Friday at 11 a.m. In the meantime, ready? Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yep. See everybody then.
Now, that was a good one. What'd you guys all think? Did you like what we had to say here today? Do you agree, disagree with what we're saying? Love to get your feedback. As usual, leave comments below. Trade to Black is growing, and we wouldn't have done it without you. So if you haven't done so, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also check us out on Apple and Spotify for the audio version. And as usual, leave lots of comments. We, as I said, love to hear back from you. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.